Okay, good morning, everybody. Live from Olympic Valley. It is Friday, the day before the 2022 Western States 100-mile endurance run, the oldest and most iconic 100-mile trail race in the world. What a privilege it is to be here on a beautiful day. My name is Dylan Bowman, joined again by my friend and co-host Corrine Malcolm. Corrine, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Just got a little coffee, feeling a whole lot better now.
And we are, of course, joined by the great Magda Boulet, a champion of the race. Yeah, big round of applause for Magda, one of the fan favorites in our sport. We will get around to talking to you in just a second. Before we get around to that, though, just a couple administrative things. Number one, if you are watching us digitally on the Western States YouTube channel, it's very important that you hit the subscribe button. We're very grateful for everybody who followed those instructions yesterday. Many of you did hit that subscribe button, and it's very important. For those who have not yet, please do so. Please subscribe. Finally, if you are watching on the Western States YouTube channel, please get in the chat. Throw some questions in there. Start interacting. Start making predictions. Get the banter going. I'll do my best to pull some of that content out of the chat and introduce it into our conversation today. Without further delay, Magda Boulet, welcome back to Western States. You have had quite a journey with this event over the years, a champion of the race. You've had disappointment here. You now are on the board of directors. Maybe just to get us started, reflect on your journey with this race and what it's meant to you over the years.
Well, I would say that, first of all, I subscribed, and it's been so fun watching both of you bring this race and coverage to life. Such a pleasure to watch all the previous interviews. But my journey with Western States started way, way back before I actually did the race. And my inspiration came from, watching the Golden Hour, showing up in Auburn and watching the finish and seeing just, what people were going through when they were crossing the finish line and what it meant to them, and you knew there was this journey behind that finish, and I really wanted a taste of it. So it took me a while to earn my spot, and I started by pacing first and crewing, which was a great learning, and then I went after my golden ticket. And in 2015 at Sean O'Brien, I earned a spot to toe the line, and it definitely changed my life.
Yeah, can you elaborate a little bit more on that? How did that running go in 2015 when you got that ticket?
Well, I was pretty intimidated just by the distance itself. Coming from from probably a couple decades, what it was of marathon running and track and field running. I would say that in 2013, when I made the leap and was inspired to join the ultra running community. I would say that my progression with, starting with a 50K or half marathon to 50K to 50 miler to 100K was pretty quick. And despite, finishing 100K, that 100-mile distance was still really intimidating on race day. So I came in 2015 with just mad respect for the distance and the race itself. I was very fortunate to have great community where I trained and lived and learned a lot from people that have done this race, that had a lot of experience. I was soaking it all up. Both of you were there, and Marin did a lot of running with all of you and our running community. But it's still, towing that line was still really, really scary. And I took a really conservative approach. And it wasn't until about coming into Forest Hill where I found myself in the lead. That being said, at Robinson Flat, I went off course. And the course was really marked well. It was all me. I had my head down.
And it even happens to the best, folks.
It does.
To the best.
User error. There's a lot of things that I was not paying attention to. I was so focused on just putting one foot in front of the other and following a person in front of me that I did go off course, and that was a huge learning for me. How to recover from something that felt so overwhelming at that point, because I figured that I was going to run more than 100 miles that day. So that was a fun detour. I recovered, and it just.
And you won the race. Come on, you won the race.
It was a good day.
Something that all of us dreamed to do, and you managed to do so in 2015. And what a spectacular highlight of your career, a career that's filled with highlights. And I'd love to talk a little bit about your evolution as a person. You know, I think a lot of people view you as not only a great athlete, great person, and also a great leader. And I think that's been manifested in a few different ways recently. You were elected to the board of the Western States, and it was recently announced that you're now the big boss, the president of GOO. You're wearing your patented GOO hat there. I think you wore that in 2015 when you won the race, something similar to that. But maybe talk about, I'd love to know like your lifelong history of being an athlete, how that's helped you to sort of manage this professional evolution and stepping into these leadership roles.
Yes, I think that, I would say that sports in general and running has had tremendous impact on my life and who I am as a person. I would say that, I've had, every decade or so an evolution of, who I evolve into as as an athlete and, as a human being. I think those two go hand in hand. And the learnings that you gain from, from sport, from, competing, from navigating, especially, races like 100-mile races, you do apply a lot of those learnings to life. You hope you will take advantage of all those learnings. There is a saying that when you do a 100-mile race, you literally live a life in one day. And I feel like that has been an evolution for me, as a human being. I continually learn something. Every time I show up to this race, I learn something. And over the years, I found like just the joy I get from just being part of the community and finding joy beyond just being on a podium, and really giving back to the sport that has given so much to me. And you never know how much you're going to get until you actually do it. And for me to be on the board, to represent a company, that has helped me become an athlete, the athlete that I am, and now, showing up here, whether it's crewing or pacing, or just doing logistics, like being at an aid station, it just brings me so much joy, and it continues to, to evolve me as a human.
So we're going to kind of, I think, piggyback on that idea. As Dylan mentioned, you're on the board, you're the president of GOO, and you have a lot of people and athletes that you care about in the race this weekend. You have GOO athletes in Keely Henninger and in Tim Tollefson that'll be towing the line that we hope great things for this weekend. Mm-hmm. How are you balancing all those things when you're going to be out on course tomorrow?
I used to think that I had balance. I don't. Let's be honest, I don't.
Thank you for your honesty.
And not that balance is overrated. I still continue to search for that balance, but just like many other people, I do overcommit. But I find such tremendous joy in the journey, in the process, and being here and supporting our athletes means so much to me because it really connects me to when I show up at work, I know that I have a reason to get up in the morning and do what I do, and inspiring everyone at work to continue to do what they do so well, so we can support the athletes on their journey, and the community itself. So I'm going to find my balance out there, but it's more about recovery than balancing.
Yeah, tomorrow there's no balance.
There's no
for
balance.
us too also, the balance comes next week, I think.
Someone told me yesterday that you haven't done Western States right if you haven't slept in a sleeping bag on a track. I think we talked about it, and that's going to be tomorrow night. That's going to be me, so that means I'm actually going to do Western States right.
Yes. So there's some people asking about being on the board in our YouTube chat here, and I think this would be a fun thing to talk about. I think you were on the committee that considered or reconsidered the race mission and values, and I think it'd be fun to just maybe pull back the curtain a little bit of what that conversation was like. what it's like to be in the board, the characters that are there, and the consideration that goes into something like that. You don't have to recite the values from memory, but maybe just give a little glimpse into what it's like to be on the board and that process in particular.
Well, first of all, it's such an honor to be considered and to be on the board and to bring a unique perspective. I think we all bring unique perspectives when we show up at a table, and it's been an honor to participate in the making of this year's race and really contributing to something that's so important, having a mission, that really inspires and transforms lives and brings community together, and continue to, do good in a community is, it's an honor. And working on values that really, there are guiding, values that, guide us through, all the decisions making, bring us together here, and I am looking forward to, this is my first year being on the board, so it's been only a year, but I feel like I have so much to contribute and continuing to evolve and bringing our values to life every time we bring this race, as well as the research and the trail work that goes on, is really meaningful. So that's, if you can start and be a part of, again, the mission. We didn't create the mission today. It's been around for a very long time, but it was more just, evolving as, as an organization, bringing the community closer to what we do, and even with the work that you guys are doing, like spreading the word about who this organization is, what we can offer to the community, has been a tremendous evolution.
It's been cool to watch the race evolve and to watch the board, become leaders really in the sport, I think, and I want to kind of change directions a little bit here. There are 385 really brave runners towing the line tomorrow morning, some of whom got in yesterday. I think we're deep in the wait list now, into the 60s. Having done this race, having seen the highest highs and the lowest lows out on the course, what advice would you offer to those 385 people getting ready to head their way to Auburn?
There's definitely a list of recommendations that you have for people in this race, but trust in your training that you've done is, this is not a time where you question anything. You have to really trust the process. You have to have some fun. The year that I told this race for the first time, I brought this hat for a reason, because it wasn't just to protect myself from the sun.
Because it's so stylish.
It's not to take yourself too seriously. You have to have a reminder that this is still putting one foot in front of the other. You have to have huge respect for the race, the distance, the environment. It is a hard race, but most of the people that are towing the line have done the work and are prepared. So have some fun out there, and it's going to get hard. And I always tell my athletes, just smile through it. You expect that it's going to hurt, but make sure that you can smile through the hurt, because we do this because we love it at the end of the day, and we sign up for it voluntarily.
What a great piece of advice to end our interview on. Big round of applause for the 2015 champion, Magda Boulet. Magda, thank you so much for joining us. It's an honor to talk to you. Next up, the race director, the boss, Mr. Craig Thornley. Stick around. Okay, we are back, folks. Welcome back. It is Friday, the day before the Western States 100-mile endurance run, and we are here with the race director, the boss, our fearless leader, Mr. Craig Thornley. Before we went live, the three of us were just chatting about our collective number of finishes. It's 14. This gentleman occupies 9 of those, a 9-time finisher and the race director. Craig, welcome to the show. Thanks for carving out some time for us. Tell us, I guess, just generally how you're feeling now, less than 24 hours before the shotgun goes off.
First off, thank you both for doing these interviews again. This is a great ad. How am I feeling right now? I feel there's a waitlister coming from Santa Fe. He's flying here. He doesn't have a spot. So I'm conflicted because I want him to get in, but it means somebody here is, or somebody trying to get here is having some kind of issue. So that's what I'm feeling right now. I'm conflicted.
How deep are we on the wait list now?
67 got in yesterday, number 67.
That's the deepest, as far as I know, we've ever gone on the wait list, which was only instituted maybe in 2018?
2017 was the first year. Last year we exhausted the wait list, so we drew 75 this year in anticipation. You know, we didn't know what COVID was going to do for travel and who knows, health. So we drew 75, and we're really fortunate that we drew 75.
How does it feel to be coming into this race? Last year, I feel like we had a lot of uncertainty. We were still very, very much in the throes of the pandemic. This year, we're kind of coming out of it a little bit more. Is that providing a sense of calm for you going into the weekend, to not have as much of that looming over you this year?
Yeah, last year was definitely hard because of that. There were so many unknowns. And this year, I mean, going down to 67 on the wait list, obviously something's still going on out there that it's not normal yet. I don't think that's our new normal. But yeah, last year was we were rusty. We'd taken a year off, so all of the procedures and protocols that we used, we were just a little bit rusty, and I feel a lot better this year. We were good at Memorial Weekend, so I feel really good that we're going to put on the world-class event that we promised people.
So before we go into the X's and O's of what it takes to put together and manage a race of this caliber, I'd love to talk about your personal history with the race, because everybody knows you as the race director of Western States, but I think it'd be fun to provide a little color to your personal relationship with Western States prior to you taking over as the race director. Maybe just give us a brief summary of the last, I guess, maybe 20 years that you've been exposed to this race.
Yeah, so my stepdad and mom moved us to Cool in 1977 from the Bay Area, and my brother and I thought, and my stepbrothers too, we thought, wow, what a playground. We were right above this canyon. We could go down and play on the river all the time. And in 1978, we happened to be camping right on the trail near Hoboken Creek, and a runner comes by asking us where the aid station was, and we're like, we don't know what you're talking about, right? And we eventually figured out that, oh my God, we're in the middle of this 100-mile race. And both my brother and I recall the look in the eyes of those runners, and we had no idea what they had experienced, but we wanted what they had experienced, and I was pretty much mesmerized by the race since 1978, since that evening.
When was the first time that you ran the race then?
2001. I thought you had to be old to run Western States back then, so I tried my marathon legs and, you know, batted my head over and over and over trying to shave seconds off the marathon. And it wasn't until I was, I think I was 40 or 37.
A stat I heard thrown around yesterday, and you can correct me because I'm not sure that I have the number perfect, but something like 86% of the runners towing the line this weekend, it'll be their first Western States. What does that mean to you as the race director and running a very hard lottery? People try for years and years and years to get into this race, but in my mind, to have 86% of the field towing their line for the first time at Western States is pretty exciting.
Yeah, I don't know if that's accurate, because we ask how many Western States finishes you have, so it's possible that people have DNF'd or had, probably it could have been a DNS too in the earlier days. It's still a really high number. I think it's awesome that we're sharing this race. We're sharing the experience that those of us have done it before, when most of us on the board have run the race, and most of us in management and the volunteers at the aid stations have been a part of the race. So for us to share that experience with people all over the world, it means a lot to us. Yeah. We're not just holding it. This is our race. We're not going to let anybody else run it.
What a gift. And I think in this line of questioning, we had Tim Tollefson on the show yesterday, and he provided a great illustration of his resuscitation from implosion on Cal Street, specifically the Cal 2 aid station. And I think it was a great way to describe or encapsulate the beauty of the army of volunteers behind this race. I'd love, as the race director, if you could give us a little bit more perspective on the people behind the race, the greater Western States community, and the volunteers.
Yeah, I think what separates Western States from many other races, not to diss other races, but there's so much institutional knowledge and course knowledge and race knowledge at those aid stations. You know, there are people that have run 10, 15 times, and they're helping you. That's a pretty powerful. It's not independent groups that don't have any association with the race or the run, which many aid stations could be run that way, right? You need bodies, you need people to hand out cups, but when there's questions about what's coming up or little bits of knowledge that someone at that aid station has, and I've maintained for many years now, it's the aggregate of the individual interactions that runners have with the aid station volunteers throughout the course that aggregate is what makes that so powerful.
I'd love to hear a little bit. I met a runner yesterday who is going to be the first Indonesian runner to run Western States, and I'm wondering if off the top of your head you know what our country spread is this year, how many countries we have represented at the race this year. Maybe we'll nod another board member in the audience.
I was looking for help from my wife because I think we just figured that out. I don't know off the top of my head. There's more international runners this year because of the rollovers the last 2 years, so it's more than normal.
What about other interesting stats? You know, number of volunteers per runner, the pounds of ice per runner, any other fun things like that?
Yeah, so it's about 4.5 volunteers per runner.
That's wild.
Staggering.
That is wild. And we ordered 32,000 pounds of ice, and that works out to 83. I'm sorry for Europeans that don't know what those numbers mean, but that's 83 pounds of ice per runner. Obviously, you got to share it with pacers and maybe aid station folks need it, but 83 pounds of ice per runner.
There's no
That's
excuse
nuts.
to not be putting ice on yourself out there. There's a
No,
lot
not-
of ice on course.
No, well, it's definitely a challenge. We can order that much ice, but we have to distribute it in the right ways, right, Bill? And that's not necessarily easy. We have ice trailers that we stage throughout the course, and the aid stations can go and get ice from those trailers.
So, Craig, this has been a time of change, an accelerated change over the last, at least during your tenure as race director. And because of its stature, Western States occupies, a leadership position within the sport. How do you think about your responsibility as the race director of this race and the greater ecosystem of the trail running community globally?
I definitely want to be in this position. I wouldn't want anybody else to be in my seat right now. So as long as I feel that way, I think that's a healthy place to be. It's the number and quality of the people on my team, on the board, and the key volunteers. It's just mind blowing, and that's what makes it possible to be a leader, because I don't have to worry about a lot of details. Like at registration, someone asked me, "Oh, do they got to fill out all this information on the form?" And I said, "I have no idea." And they go, "Well, you're the race director." I'm not consumed with those kinds of details. I got so many other details, and
You
I try to stay
memorize
higher
the
level.
rule book?
It was the Squaw Valley or the Olympic Palisades waiver, and I said, I don't get down to those levels. I couldn't, right? I couldn't be consumed with all those details and still be zoomed out enough to try to be a leader.
Yeah, I was impressed you were able to turn the sound off on your phone when you came to sit down with us, because I'm sure it is going to be ringing off the hook for the rest of the day, at least for a little bit longer. As the race director, working with an incredible board, working with an incredible group of volunteers, Is there something that you're most proud of when it comes to either an initiative that the board has taken on or something that the race stands for in its ethos and in its mission statement that really makes you very proud?
Yeah. Every day we're dealing with the tension between maintaining traditions and the history of what we've done in the past, and on the other extreme, trying to advance and do new things. And we're always trying to find the sweet spot in between that, and that's not easy. I think the mission statement helped us focus that, and I can look at that, and I'm really proud of that. That is not easy, and it's a daily awareness of, wow, should we put Hoka banners across No Hands Bridge, or not?
Right, and it's not without criticism, and I think everybody appreciates your transparency in all the decisions that you make. Craig, let's talk about the most fundamental element of this race, that being the trail that connects where we sit here all the way to Auburn. I was talking to Topher Gaylord about this the other day, and I don't think a lot of people appreciate just how few people traffic the trail outside of race day and how much work goes into putting the course together. Could you please just illustrate that whole process for the audience?
Yeah, so we recently, I think it was during the pandemic year, we implemented a stewardship model for maintaining the trail as opposed to having these big 50-person work parties, which weren't very effective at clearing the blowdown and the whitethorn. So we're now on, I believe it's the third year of that program, and it's working out really well. The stewards, of which there are 7, they do a pretty yeoman's work to get the trail ready. And I have a big section. I have Watson Monument to Duncan Canyon Aid Station, so I'm out there myself.
That's probably the least trafficked section of the entire course, huh?
Absolutely, yeah. The wilderness hardly gets used at all. There's more motorcycle traffic now from Lion Ridge Aid Station down to Robinson Flat. They may use the trail more than runners do, but yeah, it's seldom used.
Any comments on the condition of the course right now?
Well, Granite Chief, we were there 2 weeks ago. There was still quite a bit of water in the trail. That's the section that the $1.4 or $5 million realignment project. It's going to raise the elevation of the trail, so it'll be above the discharge of those springs. It's quite wet right now, and it's not a good trail. It's probably one of the reasons why it doesn't get used much, because it wasn't designed. It was just, we're going west. It was Wendell Roby, right? We're going west. We're going to Auburn. And it goes down and up and right through these springs. There's not much snow up there. All the trees have been logged out, although I think one new tree fell between Lion Ridge and Red Star on my section, and I'm not going to get it.
A new obstacle for the runners tomorrow?
Yeah, just a little one. We did a lot of work. I think we had 4 days attacking whitethorn. Whitethorn is that really hard, fast-growing plant with thorns on it. It grows after a fire, and it is not fun to run through.
So I think, kind of a question that we asked Magda as well, and I think as a 9-time finisher, you probably, have some good advice built up over the years, but is there anything that you'd want the runners to know kind of heading into tomorrow, or even their crews to know heading into tomorrow that you hope that they take with them along the trail?
Well, I'm going to say some words at the pre-race briefing. Can I just save it for then?
You can definitely save it for then.
Okay, I'll save it for then.
Give your big round of applause for the race director, Mr. Craig Thornley. Craig, thanks for all you do. Give our warm thanks also to all the volunteers and everybody that you mentioned here in our conversation. Stick around. Next up, we're going to have Marie Sammons. We're going to talk a little bit about the UTMB World Series. Be right back. Okay, welcome back, everybody. Just to reset, it is Friday, the day before the Western States 100-mile endurance run. My name is Dylan Bowman, joined by my friend and co-host, Corrine Malcolm. We were just joking, 3 podcasters walk onto a stage. This might be a long one. We're joined by Zoe Rome. Zoe, welcome. Maybe first, just for those who aren't familiar, give a quick intro to you and how you're feeling heading into Western States.
Hi, I'm Zoe Rome, and I feel really great. Yeah, I feel well tapered and excited. Yeah.
I had the privilege of getting to hear you speak last night at Trail Sisters, and I think we're all here because we love this race. It holds a special place in our heart, a special place in our community, and I'm just wondering what it means to you to get to be a part of the race this weekend, making your way to Auburn.
Yeah, last year I actually came out to write a story about Western States for Trail Runner magazine, and it was honestly kind of hard to be on the sidelines. Like, every part of me felt twitchy. Like, it's like I kind of felt like I was backseat, like air braking. Like, I wanted to be out in the race. Like, I wanted to be a part of it as an athlete. The athlete in me was far exceeding the writer in me. And it just feels unreal and so exciting, and like the realization of a lot of dreams and hard work to get to actively participate in the race. And covering it as a journalist is obviously so amazing, but there's nothing that compares to, not writing the story, but trying to be the story.
I can imagine you're probably already formulating the story that you're going to write after the race.
I think the good thing about being a professional writer is I'm pretty skeptical of any self-imposed narratives. I'm like, we're really going to not write the story until you're on the track.
Yes. So you won't be out on, Red Star Ridge out there sort of pretending you're at the typewriter, putting the words on paper. So maybe let's talk a little bit about your background. I mean, you are a journalist by training. You're the editor-in-chief of Trail Runner magazine. Maybe talk about, are there any stories that you're looking forward to following? I'm sure you maybe have already given assignments to other writers who are covering the race. What are some of those things that you're excited about?
Yeah, I think, a lot of people coming off the strong female performances last year were really paying attention to, again, an additionally strong, super deep women's field. Having so many women in the top 20 last year, what's that going to look like this year? And with the F1, bib in play, I think it'll be really amazing to see women gunning for that top position, gunning for those top 10 positions. I'm really excited to see what happens at the front of the field. I think that, again, as a female journalist, as a female sports journalist, that's the part that really, really resonates with me. And it's almost going to be hard out there running. I'll be looking for updates from my crew to see what's happening in all parts of the field, and it'll be hard to switch that part of my brain off and to focus on my own story. But I think that that's what I have. I have a writer here from Trail Runner magazine. Shout out to Nick. Covering
Nick Triolo,
stuff.
Shout out Nick.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what he covers, and I think that we'll cover it really differently. And I'm excited to see what he's tuned into, who he talks to, and hopefully once my brain has recovered from the race, I'll be able to give him a really good edit.
Something I really appreciate about you is your ability to kind of use your voice and use the platform that you have to really, center other voices, to shine light on things that are really important to you. And I'm wondering, while you're going to be, you're running this race, what do you, meaning-wise, what do you hope to get out of it?
Yeah, I think that for me, really holding myself accountable to my potential is, it's newer for me at this stage of life. I wasn't always, I don't come from an athletic background, so learning to push myself and actually expect greatness from myself is kind of new. And I'm really excited to demand my best from myself. And you can't do that in this, you can't run 100 miles every day. And I think that this is just the most amazing stage to really see what you're made of and to do that. And I think that, I just hope it inspires other people who maybe didn't always come from an athletic background to see, can I participate on a big stage at what I love?
Let's expand on that, because I think this is fascinating. You not coming from an athletic background and not expecting greatness from yourself athletically, but I feel like I know you well enough to know that you expect greatness of yourself professionally and in everything else that you do. So how has maybe that translated into your life as being an athlete, adopting it later in life?
Yeah, I was actually cut from my high school cross country team. They were like, you seem like more of a jumper, but running maybe not your thing. But I always loved it, and I kept running anyway, just because I had fun with it. And so sneakily, I was kind of building, I guess, like a pretty solid aerobic base, or at least a fun base. But I always, like from the time I was a little kid, wanted to be a writer. I was like competing in writing competitions in first grade. I was like publishing my own books at Kinko's, really trying to be a good writer. And I feel like, that kind of professional confidence and competitive running confidence kind of cross-pollinate, and learning to expect more of myself as a writer helps me demand more of myself as an athlete, and vice versa.
So we've asked this of a couple people this weekend, and it's this idea that, this is inherently an individual sport, but at the same time, we have to surround ourselves with a team. We have to ask for help. We have to, put our best foot forward by making that team happen. And I'm wondering, as you were heading into this race, knowing that you're into the start line, what did putting together that team mean for you?
Oh man, putting together my crew was the absolute most fun part of this. We're having the best time. I've got a writer that I really look up to, Peter Bromka. I've got Amelia Boone. I've got my partner here. I've got friends from Carbondale. I feel so loved and so showed up for. And I feel like if I was the average of my crew, I'm an amazing person, because it's just an incredible group of humans, and I feel like if I can just bring a little bit of what everyone is bringing to the table to my race, it's going to be an amazing day.
Isn't it like you are the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with?
Exactly. That was my feat. I was like, if I'm the sum of my crew, like these are the people I want to be the sum of.
That's why trail people are the best! Amazing. So you got into the race via a sponsor spot from Inside Tracker. They are also generously supporting our live stream tomorrow. Corrine and I very much appreciate that. I think we should give them a little love.
Yeah, thanks so much, Inside Tracker.
Yeah,
I feel
maybe talk about the product, the brand, and maybe your relationship with them, how this all came about.
Yeah, I think one of the things that really resonates with me about this partnership is they're really focused on what's on the inside that counts. While there's a lot of great brands that have different sponsorship models, they were like, we just want to give you a platform to tell your story, to do your thing. And then they kind of stepped back to let me do that. And I think that, empowering me to just be myself, to say what I want to say, and to not really graft any sort of exterior narrative onto what I'm doing has been really, really freeing. And again, I'm not, necessarily coming to this race with the deepest resume that a lot of other athletes have. Inside Tracker really just wanted to give me an opportunity to potentially build a platform. And that is the most, as again, someone who's approaching this as both a storyteller and an athlete, that really, really, it feels like a good fit for me. And, I think every athlete is looking for ways to just feel healthier and happier. And I don't even really like the word optimized as much. I really love that they support me just feeling good and having fun.
That's immensely important. I think that resonates with all of us here. I had the pleasure of getting to meet Lauren Fleshman last weekend, who is just a wonderful human being. And we were talking about mantras and maybe what that internal voice sounds like as we get out there. And her writing coach is who she hears in her head. And I'm wondering, as you head off from the start line tomorrow, what is that voice in your head going to sound like?
Yeah, I think a lot of this quote from one of my favorite poets, John Keats, about the point of reading poetry isn't to swim, the point of jumping in a lake isn't to swim to the shore, it's to be in the lake. And I really think that is what I'm trying to focus on tomorrow, is to just be in the effort, be in the experience. Don't focus on getting out of it. Just be where you are. Remember why you jumped in the lake.
We're getting poetic here. How beautiful is this? So, we've talked about literature and poetry, but maybe let's talk about ultra running. Of course, you are here not just to finish, but I'm sure you want to, achieve greatness like you talked about earlier. Talk about your season, your preparation. I know you won the Collegiate Peaks 50 back home near Buena Vista, Colorado. So yeah, just give us a look into your preparation, any practical bits of wisdom that you can give to the audience.
Yeah, I actually kind of started my season off having to take a little time off for Achilles tendonitis, which was a bit stressful, but it ended up being such a huge blessing because I think it really gave me a bit of rest that I needed. And as soon as I was able to jump right back into training, I just felt leaps and bounds fitter, better rested, more prepared than ever, which is never what you want to hear when you're injured, but it totally is true that sometimes your body gives you the break you need. And then just kind of enjoyed some great Colorado winter training and did a 50-mile tune-up in Buena Vista and ended up winning because it was kind of a hot day and I do really well in heat and all the men in front of me DNF'd in the heat. So easy.
If that's not a good omen for tomorrow, I don't know what is. Kind of building off that with the heat, knowing that it's going to be warm, although it was surprisingly cool and rainy yesterday.
I know, it's been, I would like to, if I could put in a request to the weather people, if we could turn it up one notch.
Yeah, we're looking at 2018 temps, I think, and that was, the canyons were warm that year. I can attest to that. So I'm wondering, is there anything else outside of the heat that you're anticipating, like being like, okay, I'm going to have to be adaptable out there?
Yeah, I'm, excited to see how historically I've been pretty good at fueling, and I hope that that's true, but I'm also very open to learning about adapting my fueling plan. And I haven't done a hot 100, so I'm excited to see what it's like because, regulating your temperature for 50 miles is really different than for 100, and I'm excited to see how learning from that 50 can apply here and how I can manage my effort and my temperature for a longer amount of time.
Maybe last question for you here, Zoe, on this subject. I think, obviously this is your first time here. Have you been on the course at all? And maybe what are you looking forward to most out there?
Yeah, so I came out to the training camp and I got to run with some amazing friends, teammates, some amazing strong women. And I was actually coming up out of Rucky Chucky with Tyler Green. And I was like, do you have any tips? And he was like, lay down all the positive memories and the friendship you can now so that you can pick it back up when you revisit these parts of the trail. And I've been thinking about that every day, just like the amazing connections I built with the women I was running with over training camp and enjoying the landscape and the trail. And I just am excited to in low points, encounter parts of the trail I've seen and be like, yes, I was running with Leah here. We were having so much fun. This is great.
And that's what it's all about, folks. A big round of applause for Zoe Rome.
Thanks, guys.
Good luck tomorrow, Zoe. Can't wait to watch you. Next up, from the UTMB World Series, Marie Sammons. Stick around. Okay, welcome back, everybody. This is our fourth interview of our third pre-race interview show. My name is Dylan Bowman. I am joined by Marie Sammons. Corrine had to take a quick break, but don't worry, we are back. Marie, welcome to Western States. I know this isn't your first time here. You are, of course, representing the UTMB World Series. Maybe first just introduce yourself, who you are, and what you do for UTMB.
Oh, right. Well, hello, everyone. I'm Marie Sammons, and I'm happily Director for Sport and Sustainability for UTMB Group. So now becoming a bigger company with many races all around the world. So delighted to be here.
Yes, and it's been a period of evolution for the UTMB organization. You and I have known each other for a while. You were in charge of the Ultra Trail World Tour for a while, so maybe just as this being an opportunity to be informational for the general ultra running audience, explain the difference or this evolution from the Ultra Trail World Tour into the UTMB World Series, what the differences are.
Right. The Ultra Trail World Tour was a global series of approximately 28 events all around the world. They were all very independent in the way they were functioning and everything. And we switched to a different format with the UTMB World Series, where basically we tried really to have some harmonized rules, harmonized things, and all the for the runner experience to have something that they really feel that when they take part to one of the UTMB World Series events, there is some common things they can experience.
So, yeah, as you were saying, the UTMB was a collection of independent races. Now UTMB and the UTMB World Series represents a portfolio of races underneath a single brand, and therefore hopefully delivering an elevated and uniform experience to the runners. But Western States remains an independent race. Maybe just explain the differentiation with Western States and why UTMB made the exception for this race.
So Western States is, yes, the exception in the UTMB World Series. I think we've had a long relationship with Western States, and we know that this is such an iconic event, being able to really gather all this North America, like becoming international, strong trail running experience. We felt that same way for Western States and for UTMB, we would really gain on having a collaboration. And the one we experienced when Western State was part of UTWT, I think was very successful for the race, very successful for the series. So we really wanted to find a way to keep going together.
You and I were at an event last night, and you and Fabrice, another representative from UTMB, a gentleman who will actually be running tomorrow, said a few very kind words about this event and your perception of it being here now. Maybe just for people back home in France or the European audience, what makes Western States special from your perspective as somebody who's around world-class races all over the world?
Well, Western State is so different from any of the events you can have all around the world. You have such a strong feeling of this legend. I don't have the proper word, but it's something you feel that's difficult to explain, but you feel you're really in a place where trail running has been there for so many years. And even in Europe, where we have events that have already a long story, well, since still Western States feels like it's way older in that tradition. So it's hard to explain.
It is hard to explain, but when you're here, you feel it, right? I want to ask you the same question I asked Craig Thornley a little while ago. Craig, obviously being the race director here at Western States, being in a leadership position within the sport in a time of rapid and accelerating change, growth, maturation. Talk about the UTMB organizational values. What are your priorities as a brand, as a race organization, and how do you guys intend to be leaders in this next generation?
So that is a vast question. What I can say is that when we originally really thought about UTMB World Series, we wanted first to have events that would be close to the running community. So we wanted to make sure that we would have events all around the world. So this is not exactly finished yet. So we have 25 events. We'll have probably 10 more next year to be really close to the community, to get the opportunity for those runners, wherever they live, to have this UTMB experience, extraordinary experience. So I think what we want to do is just make available for as many people as possible this extraordinary experience you have when you take part to events like UTMB Mont Blanc and Val d'Aran and all these events.
So speaking of UTMB Mont Blanc, which is going to represent the series finale, another just, aside from Western States, the other sort of most important race in the world. And on the line here at Western States are opportunities for runners to either qualify directly or accumulate stones that they can apply to the UTMB Mont Blanc. There's a lot of Americans who want to run UTMB Mont Blanc. Could you please explain how they can do so?
Sure. So the sports system has evolved. And so as you just said, there will be 3 races at UTMB, OCC, CCC, and UTMB that will be the finals, each one being the finals in each race category, 50K, 100K, and 100 miles. So for all the finishers of Western States, they will all gain 4 running stones. And those 4 running stones are just number of times their names will show in the lottery. So in order to be able to get into the lottery, you need 2 things. You need a minimum of 1 running stone, and you need a valid UTMB index. So by finishing Western States, you accumulate both. So you have the 4 running stone and the valid UTMB index in the 100-mile category. So that's for everyone. For the top runners, so the top 3 male and female runner of Western States will gain a direct access for UTMB. And because of it's close to the race, they will have the choice of either coming in 2022 or 2023. So they have, in reality, it has 15 months. And so we will send them a message right after and ask them if they want to take part in 2022 or 2023.
And those of us who have been to UTMB Mont Blanc know that it is a very special experience. So for those in the audience, please do get your stones. Make sure you get in that lottery. You will not regret it. Maria, I just saw Fabrice walk past here. Fabrice is your, yeah, there he is. Yeah, your counterpart here. He's in charge of the live streaming operation for a lot of the UTMB races, including UTMB Mont Blanc. We here at Western States have recently adopted this live streaming phenomenon, and it's brought so much value, I think, to the trail running community. And I know it's being expanded this year with more races that are going to be broadcast. Anything you can share on that front, the media side in general?
Yeah, it will be on 7 events this year, so it's a big, yeah, it's a big, and Fabrice would be better than me than talking about it, but it's, what we really want to show is make people live the experience of the runner right on the track. And I think UTMB Mont Blanc has been so successful, and to help people engaging into the practice. So I can't wait to see all those live streaming and all the other events that will be in 2022.
It's going to be very fun, and Corrine and myself are going to be busy working some of those, so can't wait. Another, I guess, overlap that the UTMB World Series has with Western States is the relationship with Hoka, a brand that has really been instrumental in this period of growth and change in the sport. We haven't really given any love to Hoka quite yet, but they are the biggest supporter of not only of the race, but of our live stream operation tomorrow. Can you talk about the relationship between UTMB and Hoka, how that came about, and how you guys work together?
Oh, it's just a great relationship that is just at the beginning. We have the feeling that this is going to be a long story and a log. And so as we know, both brands started really in the same part of France, and this is, you feel it's just logic that today the story is written together to help structure the sport, to get more people into the sport. So yeah, really a great partner, and we love having them with us.
Terrific. Big round of applause for Marie Sammons from the UTMB World Series.
Thank
you
you.
so much,
Thank you,
Marie.
Dylan.
Great to chat with you. Have a
Okay.
great time out there tomorrow.
I
Enjoy
will.
the vibe of Western States. We'll be back in just a second with Katie Asmuth. Okay, welcome back, everybody. This is our final athlete interview. Last but not least, the great Katie Asmuth, rocking the M5 bib. Katie, welcome back to Olympic Valley. How are you feeling less than 24 hours before the gun goes off?
I am not rocking the M5 bib, but
F5, excuse me. See, I'm getting.
I haven't transitioned,
Excuse
but
me.
you never know what could happen next year. I will be rocking the F5 bib and pumped about it. Yeah.
So you came onto our radar last year in a big way. I think we became your biggest fans during the event. I think we are quoted at saying that over and over again, that we are now your new biggest fans. Well, you're not too new to the sport. I feel like you came onto a lot of radars last year, and to be back with the F5 bib, I'm wondering, that there's expectations maybe not. Like, how are you feeling going into the race this year versus going to the race last year?
Yeah, I feel confident, ready, but I felt that way last year too. I feel like this race potentially can have a lot of outside pressure and excitement, but for me, it's really about me running my best race on these hallowed grounds and just being able to be with my best friends and family out there and having a great day. And I know it's going to be really tough, and I'm really excited for that challenge of when the going gets tough, how do I manage that? So yeah, I think feeling good, feeling ready.
Yes, so as Corrine was saying, last year really was a breakthrough, though, for you. I mean, I literally didn't know who you were going into the race. I remember following you on Instagram during the race last year because you became one of the stories of the event. And with it being a bit of a breakthrough, I'm wondering maybe how it changed your life or your career, or just like how you viewed yourself within the sport.
Yeah, sure. Well, I signed with Saucony in April before Western States last year, and so that was definitely new for me. I'm a mom of two. I'm a nurse practitioner. I wasn't planning on ever doing this professionally, so this is very new for me as well. I feel very new and fresh to the sport. Also, my first ultra was in 2015, but really my first 100 was in 2018. So like I'm pretty new, so which means I feel not burnt out yet, Yeah, I'm ready to go. I'm pumped on the sport. I love everything about it. I feel like after Western States last year, though, I did take the professional aspect of running more seriously in that way. Like I actually was like, okay, I'm gonna try and commit myself more than I had previously, and I hope it shows. Yeah.
We had a number of moms in the top 5, I guess, last year with Ragnar in that mix too. And I'm wondering, we got to meet your boys at the finish line. They were pretty jazzed to see you at the track. And I'm just wondering, maybe we're all delusional and delirious at that point anyway, but what does it mean to be able to have them here, to be able to know that you're kind of running towards them throughout the day? I think that's a very cool narrative.
It's really special. We talk about heartstrings, and that my heartstring will be pulling for them and pull back and I'll feel it, that sort of thing. And, they're in Auburn waiting for me. I'll see them at Forest Hill, and it's like they're pulling me like a rope, like to them. And then I'll see them on the track, and it's a really powerful thing to have your kids watch you do something that you've been dreaming about for years. And it means everything. So I think the sport is really tough for parents. It takes a lot of time, mental, physical energy, and you need support. It takes a village for sure. My mom, big shout out to my mom who's watching the kids this whole time, and she's like so excited to do it, and it feels like a lot of things have to come together to be a parent in this sport, and I feel really privileged and lucky to be able to be doing this. So yeah, it's all just pinch me moments,
Well, I'm expecting a child here in about a month or so.
Yes,
so
you are.
I'll be asking for a lot
Yes.
of advice. Katie, you had a smell of the podium last year.
Yeah.
I think you kind of passed Ragnar DeBots on Cal Street, ultimately faded to still a fantastic Western States debut, rocking the F5 bib, excuse my earlier faux pas. I'm sure looking back, you're happy with your performance, but I'm sure there's things that you think you could have done better to potentially get on that podium. What are some of those things?
Yeah, I was really focused on staying wet all day. So I had 2 handhelds and was just dousing myself in ice cold water all day. And that was my main focus, was ice and staying cool. And probably didn't actually take in as much hydration as I had planned. And you don't really think about that because you're just trying to stay cool. But turns out you need to actually drink. So that's my main focus, is before I do anything, I'm going to take a sip. So hydration first will be a big mantra for me all day. And basically, I kind of got really excited at Forest Hill last year. And I think this year I'm going to be excited, but also know I have 40 more miles to go. So, yeah, maybe a little more measured.
An important distinction.
Yeah.
One thing we noticed, and I'm sure those of you who tuned in last year noticed, is that you had some fun head attire out there. And I'm wondering, I think everyone wants to know, is the hat coming back this year?
The hat, I think, will be forever on display. It will not be coming back. I'm going with a little more of a lighter decor.
Not all black. Okay.
All black. That's right. Yeah, learning. Yeah.
Katie, I'm curious, like, it seems that you have a lot of, belief in yourself, even though you have less experience than many of the women that you're going to be competing against this weekend, and coming back with a little bit more of a target on your back, or at least a little bit more awareness about who you are among the professional women in the field. Do you feel any sense of increased pressure, and do you thrive in that situation, or is it uncomfortable in any way?
Oh, no, it doesn't really bother me anyway, really, to be honest. This sport, it's so internal. I think all of us ultra runners know that it really isn't about anybody else but you, and you have to make your own decisions out there. There's a lot of time spent alone, and so there's a lot of self-growth going on. Ari from Free Trail, we were talking, and he's like, hardship doesn't build character, it reveals it. And I really take that to heart in a way that I feel all of us ultra runners really want to better ourselves out there, and it's so much more than getting to a podium or winning Western States. Like, there's such a beautiful metamorphosis going on in the journey, and I love it. I have fun with it. I want to push myself. I want to win. I want to do my best. But that being said, if everybody else has a perfect day, that's not going to happen. So you can only do you, and I hope for a Claire finish, and we'll see what happens.
We would love to see a Claire Gallagher-inspired finish there of an all-out drag race. In the last 5K. We're going to take it back just a step, kind of thinking back to your spring and kind of your build-up to this race. You tend to kind of go back and forth. You got between SoCal and Mammoth, and I'm just wondering, what does your build-up look like this year? Has it been smooth? Have you made some tweaks? I think all of us have hiccups on the way to these big races, so just kind of wondering what that looked like.
Leading question. Yes, it was not a perfect build by any means. None of us have perfect builds. I mean, if you do, then that's amazing. I have never had a perfect build. And I don't think anybody has a perfect race. I mean, it's 100 miles, so there's going to be ups and downs, and it's how you manage those. So I think, yes, it wasn't a perfect build. I was planning on running Canyons 100K, and I had this nerve issue, and I had to take a month or maybe 3.5 weeks of really decreased miles. And then the last 6 weeks, starting in May, I had the biggest miles of my life, and David Roach really pushed me there, and my body held up, and it was sort of a test, and we talked about that. He's like, if you can't do this build, then you're not going to race Western States, and I was determined to be able to rock it, and I did, and my body held up, and I am here to see another Western States, and I'm really excited about it. So it wasn't perfect. I wish I didn't have that 3.5 week lull in the middle of a build, but I did, and January to March was awesome, and so just, maybe a little break, maybe a little taper before the big builds, that's how I'm thinking of it.
Yeah, sometimes those breaks can be a blessing in disguise. I guess we will find out tomorrow. Maybe last question for you. Corrine's been asking a lot of people about the team that they have behind them tomorrow. Last year, I had the privilege to meet a bunch of your family on the track after you finished. It was such a special vibe. Your kids there, your husband, your brother, your extended family. Maybe give a shout out to the people who got you here and who are going to be supporting you tomorrow.
They're all going to be here, and it was so funny. They're like, we're coming. I see a couple of them. They're like, we're coming to your talk. And I was like, no, please don't. So they're actually headed to, they're going on a hike right now. But I have people from Mammoth, I have people from LA, I have people that started trail running with me, that introduced me really to the sport. My brother will be co-chief with my husband, Pete, and here they are. Hi, everybody. I'm talking about you. I have an awesome crew and Pacers. Actually, fun fact we found out last night, it dawned on me that over 50%, we found out 60% of my crew are coaches. That's kind of cool. I have 3 Canadians on my team. 2 of them will be pacing me, Jenny Quilty and Alyssa St. Laurent. So it's kind of fun. We've got just a fun vibe. I love my team. They've been
that
with me
seems
for a
like a
lot.
good strategy, right?
Yeah.
The Canadians as Pacers,
Right?
the notoriously friendly people.
They're great. They're fantastic. And they're a big storyline for this race. There's a lot of Canadians that are in the top. Yeah, so anyways. Yeah. good times.
Terrific. Well, Katie, it's been so fun to get to know you over the past year. It was so fun for us to watch your race last year. I know Corrine and myself are both very much looking forward to watching you race again tomorrow. All the best to you. A big round of applause to Katie Asmuth.
Thank you.
This was our final athlete interview of our pre-race interview show, but we are not done yet. We will be back momentarily. We're going to be joined by Kyle Patari and Megan Hicks for My Run Far, where we're going to do a detailed breakdown and analysis of tomorrow's race. Stick around.
Woohoo.
Okay, welcome back, folks. This is our last session of the pre-race live interview show. My name is Dylan Bowman, again joined by Corrine Malcolm with two incredible guests here. Mr. Kyle Pietari, 5 consecutive top 10 finishes here, joined by Megan Hicks, also the managing editor of I Run Far. To use Craig Thornley's words, a lot of institutional knowledge on the stage here. I think combined we have 10 finishes. Kyle's got 5 of them, so stick around. We're going to basically just do a deep dive analysis of the field. The vision is to basically just do college game day, but for trail running. But maybe first, just to introduce our guests, Kyle, maybe just let us know who you are and why you're not racing this year, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, I'm not racing. I was in the field the last 5 runnings of it over the past 6 years because of the COVID off year. I was fortunate to place in the top 10 all 5 years and puke on the track in Auburn at the finish line all 5 years.
What a streak. And Megan Hicks from I Run Far, let us know what you guys have going on tomorrow, the coverage, how people can follow it.
Yeah, sure. So this is my 13th year at the Western States 100 doing I Run Far's coverage. I've never run this race, but I've heckled it well, and I am ready to heckle all of you tomorrow. In addition to Western States' live broadcast, you can follow I Run Far on our Twitter feed or on our homepage, get additional updates from the field. I am truly sorry I will not get to see you vomit at the finish line tomorrow night, Kyle. It's a loss for me this year.
Yeah, I didn't answer the question. I broke my ankle in January. It just slipped on some ice, so I'm not running this year.
Megan, quick question before we dive into kind of some more stuff about the race. Have you found all your volunteers? I Run Far operates with a lot of volunteer help at these races, and I'm just wondering, is there anyone we need to pull from the village to get up a mountain anywhere?
We are good to go for tomorrow. We have
Yes.
a complete team. We will be covering the race from all the spots that we want to, and all of us are looking forward to sharing the backcountry news with the rest of the world. Thanks.
So get your Google Chrome browsers ready. Follow at I Run Far. Go to irunfar.com. Get the Western States YouTube channel up and running. All right, I'm going to basically act as the moderator here. We're going to just talk about what people can expect from tomorrow's race. Maybe let's start with the weather conditions. It looks like, according to the forecast that I checked this morning, a high of 91 in Forest Hill, 100 degrees at the river, 98 in Auburn. Kyle, maybe we'll start with you. Maybe give us a little historical context about the weather conditions, how it maybe compares to some of the races you've done here.
Yeah, so in my 5 years, I've experienced hot years, which is average, very hot years, and one cool year. So I really put in those 3 categories. This year is a hot year, which means it's kind of middle of the road, kind of normal, but that still means it's really hot. So the heat is still a factor. And it's not a very hot year, but the heat will still be a factor. If it's 100 at the river, people are going to be struggling. There's no other way to put it. So I think everybody should treat the heat very seriously as if it was a very hot year. There's not much you can do differently. And good luck out there. You're going to suffer.
Maybe quickly before we get to the other panelists here, when you talk about the heat, you're obviously somebody who's managed it very well. What are some of the tips and tricks that have led to your 5 consecutive top 10 performances, specifically related to the heat?
Yeah, use the ice and the water every chance you can get. But the main thing is be chill about your pacing, especially on the uphills. So Western States is notoriously famous for being a downhill runner's course. That's not only because it's a net downhill course, that's also because it's hot. If you push the pace on an uphill, you're going to raise your core temperature and risk overheating. If you push the pace on the downhill, you have a breeze to cool you off. So that's my approach. Go slower on the uphills and faster on the downhills relative to how you would run in any other race.
Megan, you've been here, I think you said 13 times. How do the conditions this year, do they remind you of anything else from the past?
Well, I guess there's a couple things that I'm watching. First of all, the predictors are saying we're going to be in the top 10 most hot years this year. So whether it's the 7th hottest, the 8th hottest, the 5th hottest, it's going to be hot. A fun observation from some of the European racers who said, well, what is really the difference between 38 degrees Celsius and 39 degrees Celsius? It's just hot out here, so that's probably a good way to look at it. Whether it turns out to be 96 at the river or 100 at the river, it's hot. Just take care of yourself all day. And I guess the other thing to note is in probably like the first 10 or 15 miles of the course, we had a monsoon yesterday for a good couple hours, which means things out there are damp. The plants are holding on to moisture, and so tomorrow morning is going to feel more humid than if we didn't have that monsoon, which some people aren't bothered by humidity. Some people who don't train with that are. So that's just another thing to think about in the cool high country hours, is what the humidity is like out there.
Well, and that might also mean that there's more water flow in the streams. So everybody should take advantage of that and dunk themselves every chance they get.
Yeah, I was just going to add that one of the other big predictors for the heat, I think, every year is how hot it's been all week. Well, last weekend, particularly up here, was cold, I will say. I was shaking on the same stage last weekend with cold. It's been warm all week. I was down near Sacramento, not that far from Auburn, Tuesday, and it was like 106 degrees. It's been in the 90s all week. They like to say that preheats the canyons, and there's some real truth to that. I remember my first Western States was 2018, and that was like kind of a prototypical hot year, and you could legitimately feel the heat coming out of the ground at you, and so it's kind of like you're being roasted from all angles. So I would say, while we talk a lot about air temperature, that doesn't actually fully qualify or quantify the easy bake oven that you are running in out there.
Yes, very well said. You took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to touch on the preheating phenomenon that people talk about here. We're not entirely sure if that has happened, but there's only one way to find out, and it's going to be crazy tomorrow. I think we should talk about the uniqueness of the Western States course. Actually, Megan, the greatest description of the race course ever written was published on I Run Far by Joe Yuhan maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago, the Western States Killing Machine. Let's talk about the course. What is it about the Western States course that's so uniquely challenging?
Gosh, which part of it should we start with?
Let's go through the whole thing.
All right, let's start with the high country. I mean, here we are at 6,200 feet altitude, and the runners are going to pass another 3,000 feet higher. Even though we runners are only up at high altitude for the first 2 or 3 hours, that takes its effect. I mean, if you are not altitude adapted, your body's going to be, heart rate's going to be a bit higher, your metabolism is going to be firing harder, and you'll be feeling it if you're not taking easy. The other most interesting part about the high country is it's the most remote, the least used, and thus the most rugged part of the course. And conditions in the high country really do vary from year to year, and we're hearing it's rough out there this year with a lot more snow than expected, and also just rough trails. So what we have seen in the last 5 years is that when the conditions are rough up high, the runners don't go out any slower. I mean, they're still cruising, but that takes its effect later on. And the front runners slow down a little bit more because of their high country, too fast runnings.
So let's take it maybe section by section. This will be fun. So we'll talk about the high country first. Megan got us started. Kyle, any other memories from that high country section or things that you think are important for the general public to understand about it?
Yeah, adding on to what Megan said, the high country has some pretty technical stretches. Lots of runnable stuff too, but the technical stuff can really wear you down when you're really eager and enthusiastic and pushing the pace early in the race, and you can pay for that later. And it can do some damage. For me, I had a really bad ankle roll mile 7 of the 2017 Western States. It was severely sprained, and it was like swollen 4 months later. It was one of the worst injuries I've ever had. And I ran the rest of the race on this swollen, sprained ankle, but it was miserable. Don't do anything like that. Chill out on the technical stuff.
You finished, 9th or 10th also?
10th place.
10th place on a completely mangled ankle. It was incredible, heroic. Keep going.
Yeah, just to hammer home that point, take it easy on the technical stuff early on, especially if there's high water flow in the streams. That's where I sprained my ankle, was crossing a stream.
I would like to add, too, I think that while there isn't like a ton of snow up there, it sounds like the course itself is just kind of wet, that while that snow has melted, those trails just don't, like they said, they don't get a lot of use. They're not quite as manicured as some of the later sections of the race, and so we will have runners with wet feet early, beyond just getting into creeks or streams. And then in 2018, there was not snow up there at all, and it can be really dusty. And so I'd recommend to any runners racing, if you are in a nice dusty line of runners, that might be a good place to have a buff. because I don't know, I was running in a chain of 20 runners or so, and I was like just getting dust kicked up at me all day, and that's hard if you in the first 20 miles you're inhaling all of that, and then you've got another 80 miles to run.
Totally. And I wonder if the precipitation yesterday may have tamped some of that dust down, which would be, I think, they'd be very happy with that tomorrow. And I guess just to drive the point home, people don't think about Western States as an altitude race, but I think it's about an average of a 7,000-foot elevation through Robinson Flat, which is mile 30. So a third of the race basically is at pretty high elevation. So those who are acclimatized are definitely at an advantage. Let's move along the course and talk about the middle section, the canyons, what a lot of people view as the crux. Megan, get us started. What's special about this part?
Everybody talks about the canyons as you dive deep into these hot things and then you climb out and then you dive deep again. And I think what is overemphasized about the canyons are the downhills. I think the uphills, they're steep, they don't have switchbacks, they're like not California grade trails. And I think the uphills just notoriously get people in the canyons. They're not ready quite for sort of easing back the effort, like, getting the heart rate down, not using the legs quite so hard.
Yeah, and consistent with what I said earlier, if you push the uphills, especially when it's steep and especially when it's hot, you can really ruin the rest of your race. So walk them slowly if you need to, or sit on the ground and cry and relax or something.
There's plenty
Don't
of
let
water
yourself
too.
overheat.
There's lots of water. I think at the bottom of every single one of those climbs there is a body of water, be it a pool or a stream or a pretty prominent creek. And I know that I've gone off trail to get into them and then caught back up to runners on the climb because I was like, I'm getting as soaked down as possible, as many times as possible. And then I think the other, kind of piece of that puzzle there too is that the aid stations are still, the aid stations get closer and closer together as you go through the race. So I think still in that section, you've got a little bit of spread between aid stations, and if you're not blazing through there, all of a sudden you're waiting to get to that aid station. You're hoping that they have an otter pop for you still, and you can get a little desperate out there. So I'd say, make sure you're refilling your bottles, make sure you're taking advantage of those aid stations out there because all of a sudden you'll be yearning for the next one.
Yeah, and Kyle, maybe just one more specific question about it. The three canyons are Deadwood, El Dorado, and Volcano, so they also have kind of ominous, scary names to them. Maybe just give a brief description of the three canyons and what makes them challenging.
Okay, well, Deadwood, that's always when my brain starts to get fuzzy. So I always forget that whole section of the race. You can kind of cruise through some of it, and you feel like you're going to fall off the side of the trail and like go down the cliff. And so just keep your wits about you. But you have to be thinking about what's coming ahead. So my brain is always on the Devil's Thumb climb, El Dorado. And that's for me the crux point of the whole race, the hardest part of the whole course, going up that climb. So I put a lot of mental effort into thinking about that. And then when I get there, it's like I go pretty slow and kind of lose ground on my competitors. But I think it pays off. But it's also kind of anticlimactic because it's like, all right, this big important point of the race, and then I'm just like slow walking it.
Casey sang to me the entire Devil's Thumb climb one year. She was like listening to music, and she was kind of bummed that I couldn't hear her music. So she was just kind of singing out loud as we went up this climb. It was very nice, relaxed pace till we got to that otter pop.
Yeah, Devil's Thumb also appropriately named with a scary moniker. And then Volcano, sort of the smallest one, the most runnable one before you get to the oasis of Forest Hill. So maybe let's transition to the final 40 miles of the Western States course. Maybe just since we're doing this in order, Megan, get us started.
California Street. Amen. People like to talk about how fast the fast runners or what your splits are down Cal Street. Well, I made it in this many minutes between the Cal 1 and Cal 2 aid stations, but I think the most successful runners at Western States chill the heck out on Cal Street, because if you can get to the bottom of Cal Street and if you can get up to Green Gate feeling ready to run and ready to motor, you can make up so much time on yourself, your splits, and everybody else in the field after that. So Cal Street is chill time.
I don't know if I agree with that, Megan.
Oh, shoot.
I've had years when I pushed extra hard on Cal Street and years when I thought I was pushing hard, but I was kind of slacking a bit. And when I pushed harder there is when I did better.
I think that's where I've caught the most people, is that I notoriously come through Forest Hill in like 22nd to 26th, which my crew does not like. They would like me to be a little bit more consistent, cause them a little less stress, and I think I've moved into that like 11th or 10th position on Cal Street. And then, taking that last spot or two between there and the finish seems to be where that attrition breaks down. But at the same time, I always put my more relaxed pacer in that zone. I was like, Nikki, tell me stories. Tell me how Jim Walmsley's doing. Tell me about the very front of the field. And so it'd be story time, and then my more serious pacer would be at Green Gate ready to punish me for the next 20 miles.
Ready to compete. But I think this is great. I mean, this is exactly what we're trying to communicate, is that it's such a complex course, even though on paper it looks like this sort of like net downhill, screaming fast runner's course, and the finishing times reflect that. Jim Walmsley running 14:09 for the course record here, and it's much more complicated, much more difficult than that. And Cal Street really is the point where you're in the sun, you're more exposed to that direct sunlight and the heat that's related to that, whereas in the canyons it's much more shaded. So it's really a crux moment in the race, and to your guys' point, it's where we start to see a lot of attrition in the professional fields. I guess let's fast forward and start talking about the funnest part of our conversation here, that being the professional fields of the race. This is a very, very interesting field that we have assembled here, as it always is. I think maybe we start with the women's side of the race. And Megan, maybe you get us started. You guys have done a lot of interviews with some of the pro athletes here. Let's talk about maybe some of the highlights from those interviews, or some of the women who you're really excited to see race tomorrow.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting era for Western states in that the women and the men at the front of the course don't have a collective huge amount of experience with this race. It's a transition time. There are no previous champions in the field, so this year is just ripe for the emergence of a new champion, of a new veteran presence, of just a whole new storyline for Western states. So I think that inherently is going to make this weekend so interesting.
Any takeaways from some of the interviews? Any athletes who seemed particularly confident or excited about the race?
It's fascinating to me how there are, a million different people running this race, and therefore a million different approaches. People who take it so seriously and who try to be so calm and so focused, and those who are very clearly trying to make light and make casual the situation. I cannot look away from Ruth Croft as the sort of hands-down potential women's champion tomorrow. She's the fastest returning woman. She finished second. She has had a dialed
fifth fastest time ever, too, by Ruth Croft.
There you go. None of us can say that she's not the potential champion tomorrow.
Well, let me just piggyback at that and say fifth fastest time ever, but I would say second or third best performance ever, because last year was a very hot year, and the course record was run in a very cool year. I would say that Beth Pascal's winning time last year was the best performance ever, given the conditions. Yes. Ruth's time was probably second or third best performance ever. And she doesn't have a cougar, so she deserves one.
I cannot agree more. I'm a little bit biased, obviously. I'll be pulling pretty hard for Ruth and would love to see her repeat at the front of the field. I think it's also interesting, we mentioned that there's not some of these like guardian angels. Kyle, you're not in it. Ian Sharman, some of these people who have been around.
Nicole Bitter, women.
The people who have been around year after year after year. So there's a lot of new faces, but there's also, I feel like last year we had a lot of women in the race where it was not only their first Western States, but their debut 100, and that feels a little bit more settled this year. I feel like we've got some of those newer Western States faces do have some 100-mile experience, and like Camille Brujas coming over from Europe as the second place at UTMB last year, super intrigued by that storyline. And then a bunch of women returning from the top 10 where it was their first. They were a golden ticket into last year's race. So I feel like while we don't have these guardian angel runners out there, like Eliza Lapierre, she has been my North Star in this race before, to be able to follow someone like that, but I don't feel like it's quite as novice of a field as it was kind of really split that way last year, like a novice 100-mile, a novice Western States versus some of the older guard in a way.
The women's international field is a really compelling storyline.
I was just going to tee you up on this because I think this is going to be interesting. Obviously, it is a bit of a changing of the guard. I see Mark Hammond in the audience here. He's not racing this year. A longtime institution of the race, great performer here. But it's a great storyline, and we do have some interesting international athletes. You mentioned Camille Bruyas. We've got Dominique Stelmach. We've got some Canadian athletes. Who are you looking at?
Lucia Bueller.
Lucia
She,
Bueller.
two of the women's UTMB top 5 last year in the starting field for Western States. How nuts is that, right?
Absolutely. And then Marianne Hogan and Anne-Marie Madden, 2 Canadians who I'm very excited to see race this
And Alyssa
weekend.
McDonald, right? Or
Oh,
Alicia McDonald.
Elsa McDonough.
Yeah. So and she has been here before. She's gotten 2 golden tickets into this race. When she is on. She's one of the few women that I've watched beat Courtney Dauwalter in a race. When she is fit and when she is ready and when she is healthy, she is someone to watch out for.
I think Marianne Hogan is the most underrated runner in the field. I think she's one of the best 50-mile runners in North America. In 2017, I outkicked her by 27 seconds at the Behind the Rocks 50-miler, and it was an all-out effort for me. And then less than 2 months later, she beat Casey Lichtig, Anna Mae Flynn, and Claire Gallagher at the Quad Rock 50-miler, and I volunteered there and watched it happen. She is extremely talented at the 50-mile distance. We'll see how she can do at the 100-mile distance.
Yeah, and at 100K, too, she was second to Courtney Dauwalter at Ultra Trail Cape Town last year. I think she won Bandera to get her ticket here to Western States. So watch out for Marianne Hogan.
Yeah, and I'm hoping to see that she's healthy. I feel like that's kind of been a storyline for her, is that when she's healthy, she is scary fast, but she has historically struggled with injuries, and I'm hoping that she is here on the start line at 100%.
You already mentioned Anne-Marie Madden, the other top Canadian woman running. I mean, she's such a long-time quiet force in this sport. She's not loud on social media. She's a doctor in her real life, and she just quietly goes about, stalking and taking pretty high marks every time she decides to race.
So consistent.
Ellie is here to pace her, right?
Yes,
too?
Ellie Greenwood, 2011 and 2012 women's champion course record holder, is on Team Anne-Marie Madden.
That's a lucky pacer.
Yes.
a
While
good
we're on the
team.
subject of dark horses, I just also wanted to mention Leah Yingling, who I think also flies under the radar and who's had an incredible season, and somebody who's one of those athletes who, like you described with yourself, who will likely run through the field late in the race. Leah Yingling from the Salt Lake City area of Utah. Any other dark horses before we move on?
Well, we still haven't mentioned anyone in the top 10 from last year, like Katie Asmuth or Keely Henninger.
Emily Hawgood.
We also have Taylor Nolan in the field this year.
Brittany Peterson, of course.
Brittany Peterson, hoping to see that she is healthy, fit, and ready to run this race. And then you've got Ellie Pell. The women's race is really, really compelling, and we are still forgetting people, I am certain. So, we talked through all of that without even mentioning, most of the women in the top 10 from last year. So it's going to be, I think, a very exciting race, with Ruth kind of maybe being that North Star that we're looking to in this, and then who knows what's going to happen, though.
Exactly, yeah, I would agree. Ruth Croft may be the slight favorite, but in a wide open field. It's going to be so entertaining. Moving on to the men's field. Who wants to get us started with that? Megan, why don't you, any highlights from the I Run Far interviews or people that you felt looked especially strong?
So does anybody else think it's crazy that Jared Hazen, who is 27 years old, is the veteran of the men's field?
Here for the 5th time.
Starting the race for the 5th time. He has the fastest finishing time of all of the starters and of any guy to not win Western States. This is a crazy year for the men's field.
Like I said about Ruth, having one of the absolute best performances ever in the history of the sport run on this course, she doesn't have a cougar. Jared Hazen ran at 26, 27, and he doesn't have a cougar. It's just unfair. I hope this is his year because he deserves it for that performance.
Yeah, and he's coming into this race, I think, with, kind of hopefully a different style, some different support, new sponsor, new coach. I feel like he's had a really solid spring of training, and I'm really excited to see how that transpires out there.
He just seems so calm, cool, collected in our interview with him. You can get a different Jared Hazen from day to day and race to race. And it was really hard to not walk away from the I Run Far interview with him and be like, potential champion.
So I might go out on a limb here and say something that might be a little controversial, but in the men's race, I kind of think that there are some favorites, but there's a handful of them, and therefore it's still kind of a wide open race. So when I think about it, I think there's really 6 favorites with maybe a 7th dark horse favorite. I view it as Jared, who we've just talked about, Tim Tollefson, Hayden Hawks, Adam Peterman, and who am I forgetting here?
Arlen Glick, I think.
I think Arlen.
Tyler Green and Drew Holman, who's who I was thinking of.
Second and third.
Then
Second and third
with
last year, yeah.
Sebastian Spaler, who I think is going to be a very interesting potential dark horse favorite in the field today. Anybody want to refute my assertion that is our list of favorites?
I think there are favorites in there. I think that someone like Hayden is super interesting. He's a person that when I see him on the start line, I say, okay, you can't count him out. But I really wonder, he's got a great coach on his side. I'm hoping that they've really honed in on some of those mistakes that he's made at some of these big races. But I fear that I will see him out front early, and I fear that he will run a really good 90 miles, and I would love to see him run a really good 100 miles.
But then for a guy like Hayden Hawks to, front run the race for like 30 miles, hang in there as best as he could, I think he probably saw spirits of, whatever religion he believes in around mile 90, and then he still finished in the men's top 10. The absolute potential of him, if he gets his strategy and all of his logistics right, is the front of the field, for sure.
We all just have to wonder what's going to happen if the front runners are not chasing Jim. This is what we've seen for the past 5 runnings of this race, and it's going to be a different dynamic this year.
Yeah, unknown. We're in uncharted territory in that sense, and I think that makes this race particularly intriguing, which I'm excited for. And then I think we have dark horses, as you mentioned, Arlen Glick, who, what's his slowest 100? Like 15, 20? Like, that is kind of scary. I just saw him. He seems happy, fit, ready to go.
He's from Ohio, I think, and historically you think really only Casey Lichtai has been able to pull it off as a Midwesterner coming out here to win the race, but Arlen Glick has all the potential, I think, to come in and be a spoiler here.
And he, so far, is like the fan favorite. He has so many people commenting for him on all of our different channels. Like, I feel like any fan of ultra running east of the Mississippi River is on Team Arlen this year.
So maybe let's talk about the elephant in the room, that being the absence of Jim Walmsley and how that might impact the field. But because we do have people who do like to race aggressively, like Hayden Hawks, like Jared Hazen, so it's going to be interesting to see if somebody tries to assert themselves early and take control of the lead. Any comments in terms of like the strategy that we might see employed over the course of the early stages of the race in the men's field?
I feel like there's 2 strategies that happen in our elite field, and it's you're going for a top 10 or you're going for the win. And that's really how it breaks down. And you can run a really, really smart race. And in last year, you could run a really, really smart race and end up 2nd or 3rd in the men's race. I think historically, though, that's not quite the trend. It's you can move well into the top 10, but it's hard to get to that podium spot running for that. Tyler Green went up the escarpment behind the lead women. So I would just like to say that I think that those are the 2 strategies that will be employed, and I'm curious to know who jumps on the going for the win train and who jumps on the going for the top 10 train, and what transpires after Forest Hill.
I think, we don't have the Kyle Pietaris and the Ian Sharmans to sort of be that guiding light of how to run the first half of the race conservative and move into the top 10, but we do have Tyler Green. Like, Tyler Green just he mowed through the field starting after Forest Hill last year. I would not want to be in front of Tyler Green at any point in the race.
He was 14th at Forest Hill last year, so he's steadily, all the way to 2nd. That is, I think, maybe an anomaly. I'm not quite certain. I haven't looked at that, but that seems like a huge ascendance.
I loved your observation about the difference between going for the win versus going for the top 10. That is such a great storyline to follow for tomorrow. And yeah, it's funny. I think just from our interviews that we've done over the last 2 days, Corrine, both Tyler and Drew Holman coming back as returning podium finishers, 2 guys who seem to be in that Zen state, who really do have a peace of mind, it seems like, going into the race, and who both, I think, are hungry to improve upon podium from last year.
And let's add Cody Lynn to that group, too.
Sure,
yeah,
he's great point.
Ready.
Yep.
And also, I ran with him and Tyler early on last year. We were all moving really fast, but all 3 of us were keeping it dialed back, while other people ahead of us were going a little too hard.
Yeah, and say there are people that we're missing in this group too. You've got Jeff Colt, you've got John Rea, you've got, I'm going to keep forgetting Scott Trayer, who's had it seems like an insane build for this race.
Everybody's talking about Trayer too. Yeah, Tom Owens, a British
We'll see how he does in the heat, right? That might be a question mark on Tom Owens, but I'd be thrilled to see him have a good day out there.
Hey, how about this for the ultimate flies under the radar guy, Alex Nichols.
Alex
Second place
Nichols.
finisher when Ryan Sands won the race in 17. Somebody who's not loud on social media, but super duper consistent here for the third time, past second place finisher.
How does a past second place finisher fly under the radar like this? Like 10th place last year on a difficult year, but very potential podium runner.
Goldfish memory.
Alex is not flying under my radar. I looked him up on Strava. He's a friend also, but he's really fit right now. I have him in top 5.
Yeah. I talked to Martin, who's his sort of athlete manager at Scott. He was like, yeah, Alex said he's feeling good. And you know Alex, like if he says he's feeling good, that means he's feeling really good.
Top 5.
Yeah.
I think
calling it.
My prediction in particular after talking to Drew Holman and Tyler Green, Tyler was like, well, the only way to get better is to win it. And I don't know that that's going to happen. So for him, it was talking about what would be a successful day. And I think in my mind, a successful day for the men's top 10 is some faster finishing times. The women threw down insane finishing times on a hot year, and the men's field didn't quite make that happen. And so my prediction is that without maybe so much front charging, that we'll see the men's top 10 spread more akin to a 2019 or a 2018 finish, where we're jockeying that whole top 10 all the way to the finish line.
I think we'd be remiss without mentioning for just a moment, you said his name, but Seb Speller of France. Like in France, he's a typical front runner, or he's a front runner stalker. That's his MO. He hasn't raced 100 miles before, but he's won the North Face Endurance Challenge back in 2019. He took second at Lake Sonoma, so he knows how to run in California. He's been in California for 3.5 weeks, like living down in that 106 degree Fahrenheit temperature. He's seen the course. I think he could very potentially be setting the pace tomorrow or stalking whoever is and sort of pushing.
He ran hard at the front of the North Face 50-miler back in 2019, so I would not be. I feel like he might be in that we're running for the win type group.
Also super consistent runner he is, and was second behind Jim Walmsley at Ultra Trail Cape Town last year. He's won the Templier race, which is a hugely important race in Europe, but he's a rookie at the 100-mile distance, a rookie here at Western States, so it's going to be interesting.
And I want to say, I think this is a stat that's come up this week, and we're not sure if it's entirely accurate. On the men's side, this is not true on the women's side, on the men's side, the last person to win Western States in their debut 100 was all the way back in 1986. So for someone like that, for someone like Adam Peterman, to win Western States would be a historic performance.
Yeah, I view Adam Peterman as one of the most exciting characters we've ever had in the sport, let alone here at Western States. So put him on your, in the back of your head, or mark his name on ultralive.net and follow him throughout the day. Let's keep it moving here, folks. We've mentioned so many men. Before we make our predictions, so start thinking about that. There's two, I think, interesting other stories. Megan Canfield going for the 60-plus women's record in her 13th finish. And also Jim Howard returning, the 1981 and 1983 champion of the race, coming back to run again here. Any other interesting storylines or comments on those two people before we go to our predictions?
Well, I think it's already been said, but I'll repeat it here for everybody. I think Megan Canfield has a chance of beating the men's, or rather overall, record for 60 plus. It's a couple hours faster than the women's, but that lady is so dang fit.
Fast.
I heard she's fit right now, too.
I was talking to her coach, Pat Reagan, and he said that. And I think in addition to going for a 13th finish, she's been top 10 here 11 or 12 times. They call her the queen for a reason.
And Jim Howard, it's cool he's racing, but I'm going to be sad to not hang out with him at the finish line tomorrow night. But go get him, buddy.
Yeah, going to be super, super fun. All right, so let's end our show with some fun predictions. Who wants to get us started? Men's and women's champion. Sure, I'll get us started. All right. Again, we've just listed about 1,000 names, and this is pure speculation and maybe tinged with sort of our personal fan allegiances, though we try to maintain our journalistic integrity. We will do our best. I will get us started. Women first. I'm going to pick Portland's own Keely Henninger to win the race. Maybe somebody who people wouldn't think of as a favorite here, but somebody who I have a front row seat to see her commitment. She has made a new, it's a new chapter in her life, new sponsor, going all in as being an athlete, been out here on the course. And I think importantly, does very well on these types of courses and has experience at the race, has done all the heat training. So Keely Henninger, I'm picking in the women's race. And then in the men's race, I think our boy Tim Tollefson puts it together to finally secure that Cougar trophy that I know he would love to have on his trophy shelf. The hometown vibes, the motivation coming off last year's strong though disappointing 5th place finish. I've got our boy Tim Tollefson winning. Who wants to go next?
Yeah, I'll just follow up. Keely is in a good mindset right now. She's due for a breakthrough performance after going on a total tear in like 2017, 2018. I think she's just due for a big breakout performance. On the women's side, I'm going to go with, frankly, the most talented ultra runner probably in history, and just say Camille Herron. I ran by her on my way over here, and she was exuding her positivity and optimism like always, like she knows how to do when she's suffering to like the nth degree. And I think that attitude has made her so successful. I think she doesn't even have to have a perfect day to win this race, even against the best competitors in the world, because she's just that talented. On the men's side, I'm going to go with Jared Hazen. As I said, look at the data here. Nobody else in the field has even run sub 16. Jared has run 14:27.
This is why we invited Kyle to the panel, folks. This is beautiful. Keep going.
Like he's over an hour and a half faster than anybody else in the field has run. So how could you not pick him for the win?
Great analysis. Thank you. And Camille, I can't believe we didn't even mention her name. Megan, you're up next.
I mean, Camille is due for a breakout at this race. She's given it so many efforts and has trained on the course so particularly this year. She's due for a Western States breakout. Sorry we didn't mention her before. For the men, I'm going with Kyle here, and I'm going with Jared Hazen. I mean, he's either going to light it out of the park or he's going to have a rough day, but statistics, I think, are on his side for all of the reasons that you said, Kyle. For the women, I'm going with Ruth Croft. I mean, she had one of the best performances ever to not win this race on the women's side, and she's had a smart, consistent training buildup. She's trained hard, but she hasn't trained perhaps too much. I think she's just right there and primed.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue with any of that. It's kind of fun going last, because I'm like, I concur. I agree with all that. I would joke that I'm probably contractually obligated to say that Ruth is my pick, but for the sake of mixing it up a little bit too, we just spoke with KT Asmuth, and I think that she put together an astounding Western States debut last year, finishing 5th. I think that she tasted glory for a second and made some mistakes out there that she has realized and is hopefully going to rectify out there tomorrow. So I'm going to go with KT for the win, because I would just really love to see those boys of hers jumping over the finish line to greet her there. And then while I do think that Jared Hazen is probably the guy to watch, I'm going to go with Tim Tollefson, just because I think that he's had an amazing spring. He's put together some great performances. He's kind of tested himself by maybe not being that in that hunting position. He's kind of pushed the pace at some early season races, and I think that he sounds like he's just mentally in a much better space, and I feel like his performance was really hung up on that mental aspect last year way more than physical, and so I'm excited to hopefully see. I don't think he has shown his potential here yet, and I'm really excited to see that happen.
There's no way we're going to see him sitting in a chair for more than 30 seconds at this race this year.
I would agree with that.
There you have it, folks. That concludes the Western States live pre-race interview show. What a great time it has been. Thank you all for joining us. Before we go, a few very important details. Number one, if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to the Western States 100 YouTube channel. Myself and Corrine Malcolm are going live there at 4:15 a.m. tomorrow. Do not be a second late. Log on at 4:14 a.m. Corrine and I will see you at 4:15 a.m. Last but not least, a big shout out to our man Ethan Vosberg behind the scenes here. Ethan, the hardest working boy wonder here at Western States, critical piece to our little team. Good luck to all the runners out there. For myself and the rest of the panel, have a great Friday. We'll see you on the live stream. Peace out.